Ancient alien gods awaken from cosmic slumber, unleash power to redefine reality. The last super warship of humanity, built in defiance and hope, challenges the wrath of these divine titans. In this battle of immortality and human determination, fate itself shivers on the edge. A clash of fates awaits. Rise up. In the far bubbling edges of the cosmos, long forgotten by all but a few, there were legends, whispers of ancient, alien gods, immortal beings whose dreams and whims once wielded the power to shape entire galaxies. These colossuses had lain dormant in utter silence for eons, their arcane powers trapped in inactive temples of starlight and cosmic soot. Deep within the recesses of space, beyond the constellations familiar to us, these deities began to stir. There was no loud fanfare to herald their awakening, just a delicate twisting in the fabric of reality, a soft, persistent ripple that eventually became a tide. Humanity, though fragmented and diminished after millennia of conflict and collapse, hadn't disappeared entirely. They were all on the fringes of what was once a mighty interstellar civilization, but one defiance stood out, the last and greatest super warship, born semblance of desperate ingenuity and relentless hope. This massive ship, built from the refuse of an abandoned era, augmented with the accoutrements of heretical science, cried out for the ferocity of a race that survived innumerable storms. Its hull, battered by myriad past battles, contained the combined will to resist power that even myth had rendered invincible. The crew of the warship, led by the battle-hardened commander Elias Voss, were more than soldiers. They were the last torch-bearers of human legacy. Each member of the crew bore scars, physical and emotional, from wars waged across distant lands, their memories embedded deep in the very metal of the ship. What they had seen would have been considered miracles, each more incomprehensible than the other, and yet nothing could have prepared them for the reawakening of the gods. These entities had reigned as gods for millennia, able to destroy worlds with a passing thought and rewrite the fundamentals of reality on a whim. Now, against a mortal foe, their millennia-old arrogance was boldly challenged. The alien gods felt an equal sense of derision and intrigue at the awakening of their counterparts across the cosmic void. Once, they were the weavers of creation, marshaling armies of suns and shaping galaxies with their holy power. Endless societies had worshipped them, constructing enormous shrines and sanctifying their names in legend. To these celestial beings, the arrival of humanity's final warship was a glitch, a pattern error in the cosmic finery that required correction. Their power, honed across impossible millennia, was now being challenged by the raw willpower of a species that had nothing left to lose. The great dark and empty void nestled between stars occasionally echoed strange sensations as sensors aboard the warship registered erratic disturbances, be it a gravitational anomaly or a brief flicker of temporal appendage, announcing the arrival of things that made mortals run to the safety of their arms. Every crew member braced for an encounter that would defy the very definition of existence, and the ship's corridors buzzed with a grim cocktail of anticipation and fear. With steely resolve, Commander Voss addressed his team. "We stand at the precipice of oblivion, yet we hold the fate of all humankind in our hands. There may be few of us, but our will is stronger than any divine order." A clarion call that set ablaze the tinder of rebellion among the darkness that loomed. As the warship cut across the starlit abyss, a silent covenant was made, a covenant of man and machine, of hope and despair. The crew, embodiments of human tenacity, understood that the conflict ahead was not just a fight for survival. It was a test of identity, a defiance of the primal hierarchy that had long governed the universe. Everything as censor read, every whispered fable of some gods, stroked the naked fact of it. If the warship failed, the universe itself would tremble under the passions of beings who viewed mortals as insects beneath the heel of their divinity. On the flip side, defeat would herald a new age, an age in which humanity stood no longer at the whim of cosmic powers, but forced to tussle with the creators of that which commanded. And so, as the stars wove and the chasm throbbed with unfathomable luminescence, the tableau was arranged for the abstract battle between the expanse and the void. And just as the ancient gods were cloaked in the robes of cosmic glory, the human crew, hardened and free, were draped in the rags of a singular vision of defiance and resistance that was about to erupt violently in rapturous absurdity across the universe. As the ship shuddered in its wake, every heartbeat reverberated through the warship's metal corridors, and the crew prepared for the inevitable conflict. A fight not only to stay alive, but for the freedom to seal their own future in the face of everlasting darkness. The warship's sensors shrieked alerts as the surrounding fabric of space began to twist and contort. Once, the anomalies had felt far away, a shiver in the star-flecked black, until, with a jolt, they turned raw, fizzling force fields of cosmic wrath. One moment the crew saw a glittering distortion, and then a gravity vortex roared to life, an intruder black hole that was going to devour everything she wouldn't have time to register, everything in its path. Commander Voss shouted orders to stabilize the ship's flight path, his gaze trained on the flickering holographic displays. Weaving through it, as the black hole's gravity tugged at the very nature of the vessel, the warship's engineers worked to do in real time. They unleashed countermeasures crafted from technologies long since banned, esoteric energy fields engineered to neutralize gravitational anomalies. They were the beating heart of these fields, pulsating around the ship, an iridescent cloak against the lightless enemy that pushed back every limit of mortal reason. Every heartbeat on board pulsated with the crew's shared determination. Surrender was not an option. The ancient gods were not indifferent observers. With a single thought, they could twist reality to suit their whims. Time rifts crackled open and birthed along the ship's path, trapping echoes in the quasar's action and bursting the moment into roaring pieces. Once distant worlds that circled in quiet symphony became now unimaginable projectiles, thrown at the warship with abandon. Suddenly, an actual moon that had, until now, seemed almost like a star in the void, exploded in a plume of glowing debris hurtling across the emptiness like some avenging demon. In the face of this barrage, the human tacticians designed counter-strategies that were nothing short of miraculous. Rather than meet the divine rage with muscle, they unleashed a veritable arsenal of weaponized singularities, micro-black holes captured and contained within the ship's weaponry. These devices were launched into the breach of reality the gods had created, unstable yet potent. When they crashed into the cosmic chaos, brilliant ripples of light and dark shimmered across the colliding flush, blurring the fabric of space-time and momentarily bringing the scales even. The warship's control room quickly turned into a crucible of desperate ingenuity. Lieutenant Marisol Reyes was recalibrating the ship's forbidden propulsion systems in a quiet corner, far from the cacophony of alarms and crackling energy. She'd mastered technologies so dangerous they were intended to be hidden from mortal eyes, a fusion of quantum mechanics and esoteric energy manipulation. Her hands flew over the control panel, leaving trails of violet light as she manipulated millions of tiny vectors in the air, directing the flux of the weaponized singularities across the vessel before redirecting it toward the hull, building a temporary barrier, a field around the ship that might save them from the gods' lightning for just a moment longer. Outside, the cosmos twisted in insanity. The ancient gods, in all their unmatched power, were not myth after all. Guided by their eldritch, cosmic powers, the nature of time and space itself warped around them, crafting an otherworldly theater of stars and unraveling dimensions. But each assault's power, no matter how overwhelming, was met with human ingenuity. Bolstered by reckless aspiration and illicit scraps of infamous lore, the warship's armaments unleashed arcs of energy that shattered the divine norms of attack. Each room's volley of counter-energy was evidence of humanity's defiance of destiny. Amidst this galactic turmoil, Commander Voss's voice sliced through the cacophony. Hold fast. Every countermeasure, every strategy we achieve, is one step closer to taking back our future. Our enemies can twist the laws of nature, but we can redefine them. His words echoed across the command deck and infused a crew that already had looked into the abyss and discovered the courage to fight back. The first conflict had started, the infinite genius of eternal God versus raw, fierce, stubborn human delectables. With the warship threading its way through gravitational maelstrom and temporal fractures, it was apparent that every maneuver, every calculated risk, was a proposition of cosmic odds. Amidst that crucible of chaos, the lines of reality blurred, and the warship's fight against the alien deities was about to prove what it meant to challenge the impossible. Yet as the battle continued, the ancient gods' appearance of effortless dominion began to fade. Their initial surprise at humanity's defiant ingenuity quickly turned to mounting anger, as moment after moment unfolded to demonstrate that their cosmic designs had been matched by a mortal force they had long scorned. These divine beings, their mere thoughts capable of altering existence, were suddenly confronted with the need to reconfigure their strategy. With every unsuccessful effort to extinguish the warship, their rage beamed through increasingly frenzied outbursts of strength. In the emptiness of the void, the gods called forth rivers of raw might, breaking the tranquility of the interstellar fields of battle. Nebulae flared into searing supernovas at their bidding as fragments of archaic space debris were launched as if cosmic ordnance at the beleaguered ship. Time itself became a weapon as the deities sheared the continuum, generating loops of rapid-fire moments in which the warship would find itself, only to be thrown violently back into the maelstrom. Each display of celestial power was meted out to baffle and barbarize, to keep mankind groping for the tatters of a broken world. Tension inside the warship rose along with the external chaos. Commander Voss and his senior officers strategized furiously amid blaring alarms and pounding energy readings. Lieutenant Reyes, still at her station, made adjustments to the ship's temporal stabilizers to counteract the gods' attempts at time manipulation. "We're putting our systems at the brink," she cautioned, her voice calm despite the jangling sounds of alarms. "But we have to hold on. Our next step could turn everything around." The crew's mettle was tested as never before. Each assault rocked the warship, the shields straining against the barrage, energy flux flickering to the critical edge of collapse. Engineers rushed, cobbling together repairs from salvage technology and impromptu algorithms. In these dark hours, every crewman was important. Every action was a link in the chain that held their delicate hope together. Among the increasing tension, a less obvious change in the gods' strategy became clear. They were no longer just destructive, but their attacks had taken on an unearthly deliberate edge, like a series of probing actions to draw blood. Across the void, inscribed symbols of long-fallen knowledge glimmered, enigmatic sigils that throbbed with a Promethean light, illuminating where the very axes of existence had begun to come undone. It seemed as if the gods were saying something, wielding their power with an intelligence that belied their vengeance. It was a test that even the cosmos could not look away from, a vivid collision of mortal will and divine power, a perspective-defying showdown. With every harrowing encounter, the warship not just survived, but adapted, its systems learning from the gods' unpredictable attacks. The countermeasures were withering things, born of forbidden technologies and boozer ingenuity, and they started tipping the scales. Pulses of focused energy blasted from the warship's weapons, warping space and briefly vaporizing the gods' favored forms of the three beings. In those precious moments, the divine armors of the gods began to falter and reveal chinks in their majestic and powerful facade, which the mere human generals exploited with ruthless resolution. Commander Voss's voice, stern and authoritative, came over the intercom. "Concentrate on their patterns. Every stumble in their attack is our opportunity to retaliate. This is not simply a struggle for survival. This is our statement that humanity will never be oppressed to the whims of powers that be." His rallying call ignited the crew's thirst for vengeance, their unified defiance crackling through the bowels of the warship. But the gods were unforgiving, and their retaliations became increasingly complex and brutal. Storms of cosmic origin lashed the warship, warping its path and straining to rip it apart from the inside. With reality itself descending into an erratic war zone, even the most fragile of balances between creation and destruction began to cross the line. It was an opening for a war that would push the limits of power, though not even the strongest of entities escaped the prospect of manipulation from a species that would not submit. In the climax of the cosmic clash, the tide changed when mankind's last warship launched its final gambit. Sharpened through countless trials and hardened in the crucible of war, Its arsenal now confronted the old gods with a ferocity that seemed both at odds with and worthy of Genesis. His gaze filled with the gleaming fireworks of space. Commander Voss and his order would change the balance forever. Weapon systems aboard the warship, now barely a pinprick of light against the dead of space, lit up in an intricate ballet of precision and sheer force, unleashing an entire salvo of manufactured singularities toward the divine giants. The gods, once embodiments of untouchable might, began to unravel one by one. The cosmic armor they wore, woven of the fabric of space and time, cracked under the concentrated assault. The first deity was destroyed, who burst into shining particles of essence, spread out like stars in the void. It was as if the very laws of creation stuttered in that instant, shivering the very ones in the battlefield. Humanity's audacity had broken through an ancient order, forcing the gods to reassess their invincible effects. Fueled by desperation and triumph, the crew worked in a graceful ballet as every disintegrating echo of divine power came into view through the sensors of the warship, storming forward. Lieutenant Reyes adjusted the ship's targeting matrix in real time, allowing each subsequent strike to hit the target with surgical accuracy. Like the barriers going down, the blasts came in waves, pulses of controlled singularities, carefully targeted to loosen the hold of the last gods. With each hit, another piece of cosmic certainty unraveled, as the gods' formerly unassailable forms flickered and dissolved into ephemeral light. These strikes had far-reaching impact beyond the immediate battlefield. All across the interstellar medium, the remnants of divine power began to coalesce in unstable, chaotic forms. Ancient monuments to worship, long raised to these gods by civilizations that stretched over millennia, quaked as their celestial patrons were erased. And the very universe trembled at this astonishing act of defiance, the balance between creation and chaotic unraveling bending itself to accommodate the divinely supernatural victory achieved by mankind. But the war was not just a battle of destruction. It was a battle of wills, a metaphorical seizing of fate. The warship's relentless assault unraveled the gods' hold over reality, calling into question the sanctity of divine power and its supposedly infallible nature. Every exploding fragment of a god was a message. Mortal creativity and will were able to defy the mandates of an immemorial universe. Get more on the business of travel by signing up for our weekly newsletter here. It was as though the very essence of reality had been rewritten, and each thrum of the warship's armaments etched a new mended world from the rubble of the last. In that moment of climax, when the last of the deities fell away, when the last of the deity's form was behind her, swirled away into nothingness beyond the stars, into the endless void, the universe beheld a truth lost to myth, that though ephemeral in her mortal coil, the human soul housed a strength that transcended time and divinity. With a final stroke, a blinding blast that echoed through dimensions, he left Cortez with shockwaves that unraveled what little there was of celestial supremacy. And the gods, baffled and chastised by the force of human resistance, found their dominion crumbling before their eyes. It was an earth-shattering win. The galaxy was on the edge of a new epoch. The warship, her mission now written beside the stars in the book of legend, had even made the invincible face the unbreakable spirit of mankind. The ancient gods fell one after another, which caused the structure of power in the universe to begin to shake. The celestial powers that had once held sway with impersonal grandeur were no longer unquestioned arbiters of fate. Humanity had reasserted its right to chart its own course. In the aftermath of the battle, the cosmos bore silent witness to an upheaval that would reverberate through eternity. The gods of old, once great and untouchable, now shriveled, a remnant scattering into nothingness. Where once their stars had twinkled like colosseums, now their skies were red and dim. As the weapons of the warship ran hot, pulsing to the triumphant rhythm of humanity's unbending will, the turning of the wheel was palpable. The divine arrogance that had shaped the universe for thousands of years was being broken against the buckling tide of mortality. Commander Voss stared through the viewports at the ashen ruins of their cosmic ancestry, unable to make sense of the knots tightening in his heart. No longer were the mighty gods untouchables, their divine power cracked open by an indomitable will. His crew stood around him and shared this quiet victory, not knowing whether to feel relief, disbelief, or the deeper understanding that their fight had altered the very state of existence. With every fallen god, a new reality starting to take shape, one where the unbreakable laws of fate were no longer solely determined by divine will. Despite the scars it bore, the warship pushed through the fray of light and shadow that was the death of the celestial order. Its sensors read shock waves of energy fanning out, each heralding a seismic shift within the cosmic balance. The fall of an age-old pantheon had sent forth a storm of ripple effects. Holy artifacts and temples that had once served as the bedrock of divine rule, becoming a shower of dust as the power dynamics that had maintained them shifted irrevocably. In this high-stakes moment, the emotional payoff was equal parts profound and cathartic. The deities who had underappreciated the pioneer's spirit and refusal to die of the human race finally turned back into the nothingness from which they had come. Their voices, that had once raised their hands to the very heavens and commanded the elements of creation to comply, were now whispers that were swallowed by the eternal void of the cosmos. The retreat of the gods was not merely a sign of defeat, but a symbolic renunciation of an age in which human life had been defined as insignificant. This was how the universe was won, through the audacity and ingenuity of humankind, who knew only to rise up against the greatest forces at play, and in doing so, emerge victorious. As the cosmic dust settled, the universe itself appeared to breathe out, a slow, careful release of what had been tin-tipped forever. Stars glimmered bright, feeling invigorated. Lightly blistered nebulae gleamed in colors not even seen before, and almost variant, as if the universe itself had become anew just by the essence of rebellion. Their exploits became tales of heroes and villains and gods, as the once omnipotent gods had now become a warning of what happens when beings become bored with their own divinity, as the price for eternal reign had a downfall, fallible. And, in its ruin, a new order arose, one in which the driving force of creation belonged to those who defied the very ethers of tradition. They bowed their heads in unity, a feeling of solitude filling them as they piloted the warship through the altered bounds of the open medley of undulating air. Every member felt the burden of that monumental achievement, a victory that was bigger than mere survival, that would reshape the future of all sentient beings. Commander Voss looked ahead with a balance of pride and grim duty. The universe had been set free from the fickle designs of archaic deities. It was now an expanse where mortals and their allies could forge the fate they desired. That deep silence felt the finality of God's fall. The triumph was not just a military victory, but a monumental cultural and existential rupture, a proclamation that no power, however eternal or divine, was above challenge. The cosmic arena was forever changed, along with every star, planet, and organism's fate therein. The message to humanity was clear: defiance, when fueled by hope and creativity, could trump even the most impossible odds. In the quiet after the cataclysmic confrontation, even the cosmos itself seemed to release a long-held breath. He could just feel the echoes of the ancient gods, once proud, ever-present along the changing corridors of jagged space, now settling to nothing. And revered, they had broken their mythic authority, and only vagaries of power remained. The stuff that had guided their fates, shaken lives, shaped civilizations. The ship, now weather-beaten and scarred by the battles fought and victories won, floated through a changed universe, a lonely observer, to witness the first light of a new age. For the world, the aftermath was both a moment of exultation and reflection. Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the warship and took in the starlit panorama with relief and sober reflection. The struggle had turned out not just to be a collision of arms and celestial powers. They were changing as they battled, redefining the borders between mythology and historical events. Eyes lined with ancient pains and self-filled alcoves of dreams returned explained, this partial victory was only the end of a very old tyranny and a reminder he now knew without question that the time for rebuilding what was divided by the hand of gods was now. Every crew member on the ship felt that their prideful victory. You were seeing everyone from the men who had looked into the void to the men who now had the sense of hope. They carried the torch of hope inside their hearts, a glimmer of something that would be every bit as new life was lying between the ashes of despair and destruction. This space warship, a wunderkind of technology, had decreed that human creativity, blended with warrior spirit and steely willpower, could bend even cosmic law. It was a message to every corner of the universe. No force, however ancient or divine, was untouchable by the defiance of mortals. And as the warship passed through the newly woven tapestry of stars and nebulae, news of the change rippled throughout the surviving civilizations. Worlds that an hour ago had quaked under the burden of divine intent now throbbed with potential, and Egyptological ruins glimmered with fresh meaning. Legends spread of the fall of the gods, a testimony of the universe not being an orchestra of fate, but rather a canvas welcomed the strokes of human dreams. Their victory saw the people of humanity begin to reshape their destiny. They gazed up at the stars anew, no longer as subjects of whimsy gods, but as builders of their own destiny. Mission accomplished, but far from over. The warship was a symbol of fortitude, the torchbearer of a world in which all sentience determined their future. The cosmic balance was forever disrupted, and as the vestiges of divine existence vanished into history, mankind emerged, determined and unrelenting. They had dared to defy the everlasting, and they had been able to trailblaze a path into a world renewed.